and Charles. Welcome to All Things LGBTQ. It's Monday, January 12th. We have a lot of news for you this evening. But before we begin, I'd like to recognize that we are taping in Montpelier, Vermont, which is unceded indigenous land. So let's start with Keith.
You don't want to do the usual statement first, or are you holding it?
I might as well do it with the rest of my coverage.
So, as you can tell, tonight is just a bit different than our usual format. We're going to start by talking about those activists, advocates, members of our community who passed over in the past year. People who made significant contributions to our communities and who we would like to take this time to remember. So we've already been told to have the Kleenex at hand, so you are warned. I want to start with Leah Smith. And some of the people that we're going to talk about may be well-known names, and some of them maybe not so much, but they have made significant contributions. And we want to say thank you. Leah Smith was a junior at Middlebury College. And people may recognize the name from her father, who is in California, had reported her as a missing person when he hadn't heard from her. She was found 4 days later, and it was determined to be death by suicide. The backstory to this is Leah had grown up in California. Leah identified as transgender. And Leah was also an accomplished transgender athlete, specifically a diver. And her father shared that while Leah was looking for a college, she had sent out letters of inquiry around the country, looking for a place where she could be Leah. And Middlebury gave her a very positive response. So she was excited to come here. However, this was at the same time that the very strong anti-trans women in athletes movement was really getting traction, along with 47's re-election bid. Leah competed in her freshman year. She was the top placed diver at Middlebury, and she got targeted. Her name, her dead name, her information was posted on an anti-trans website, and she was subjected to ongoing harassment, both online and from her family and friends' account in person. Leah stood up and was a voice for the transgender community, and when Middlebury College invited conservatives to come and talk about transgender issues and gender affirmation, Leah stood up and was part of a panel to tell truth, to stand in opposition to what the anti-conservative voices were saying. Leah stopped competing. However, she was still practicing with the diving team, so she had a sense of connection with her community. And unfortunately, it just seems that the harassment was more than what she could endure. And actually, she had, several months before her passing, had made a comment of, her fear and her trepidation about what the current regime and the current movement was doing, and that her belief there were people who truly felt that she didn't have the right to exist. So thank you for standing up and giving voice when it was needed. One of the other people I wish to remember, and I'm grinning already, is Tim Palmer. And Tim might not necessarily be that well known in the sort of current wave of activism here in Vermont. Tim grew up in New York, got a bachelor's and a master's in political science, and worked as a legislative aide in the New York State Senate, and was very active and very involved, worked on numerous political campaigns, and in fact was the campaign manager and aide to State Senator Mary Ann Krupczak. That name sound familiar? She was the first female lieutenant governor in New York. And Tim was the person who put that campaign together and sort of got it going. Also during that time, he met the love of his life, Scott Oskchi, and I know I didn't pronounce that correctly, and Scott, I apologize. And together, and this is what was in all the remembrance, so I must say it, their beloved Springer Spaniel buddy, they were deeply engaged in their community in New York. They were advocates for affordable housing, rural health care, and in the early days of the epidemic, how to do a compassionate response to HIV and AIDS. And unfortunately, that's what took Scott much too early. But Tim continued his work. Tim continued the advocacy in Scott's name. He went on to become the founder and executive director of the Corporation for AIDS Research, Education, and Services, also CARES, in Albany, New York, and was later the executive director of the Boston AIDS Consortium at the Harvard School of Public Health. Kind of impressive. So why did he choose to come to rural Vermont and become the executive director of Vermont CARES? Because he wanted that sense of community. He wanted that connection. And while he was the executive director at Vermont CARES, he helped put together and got the funding for Vermont's first supportive housing for people with HIV and AIDS, which was at the Fort in Colchester. So when he moved on from Vermont CARES, he didn't leave Vermont. He decided to stay here. He worked at the community of Vermont Elders Cove, who we might know a little something about, the Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility, Sustainability Institute, the Vermont Energy Investment Corporation, and the Housing Foundation Incorporated. No small shakes.
No.
And before he passed over, he founded Vermont Mentor, which his whole avenue was, how do you mentor people? How do you bring them along? How do you teach them the things that they need to know so that they can take on positions of leadership? And I'm looking really quickly for the quote of, he would be remembered for his loyalty, his warmth, his compassion, his quick wit, love of lively debate, and you would have had a good time, and his deep capacity for friendship. So, thank you, Tim. Stan Baker. Stan is probably best known for being the name and the face for the Baker decision, which was the Vermont Supreme Court case that was the catalyst for the creation of civil unions. And Stan and his husband, Peter Harrigan, who is also an instructor at St. Michael's, were in the forefront for marriage equality. It was one of their passions. However, Stan, who was born in Kansas but grew up in California, I first met him as a mental health counselor. And he had a specialty in working with people with autism. And what I didn't appreciate until, looking at, all of the many accomplishments that Stan had, that he actually had created one of the schools here in Vermont specifically looking at providing Arter Creek School, which was specifically working with people with learning challenges. He also was a registered play therapist. He was also a deacon in the Episcopal Church, and anyone who had seen the All Things interview with Stan, there was going to be a follow-up talking about LGBTQIA, 2S+, and communities of faith. Is there a place for us? And Stan, in his role within the Episcopal Church and a deacon at St. Paul's in Burlington, frequently his sermons was about complex issues and how to navigate them and how to bring compassion into your sense of faith. And one of the things that I cannot not say is that Stan and Peter were both diehard Barbie fans. And they have a collection of Barbies, and I've been looking for a photograph that we can display during this that would make any adolescent envious. And in fact, Stan passed over for a heart attack while they were at a Barbie convention in Louisville, which Peter said he was with people he enjoyed. He was doing something he loved. He just gave that breath of, any place I am, here I am. And this was a comment from former Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman. Stan has always been there for others. He was a kind and thoughtful soul who just brought a peaceful energy into whatever space he was in. So,
Rest in peace, everybody.
thank you. Well, and the last one. Let me get through this one. Brenda Churchill. And
If
Brenda,
you start crying, I'm going to cry.
yeah, I'm going to do my best. Brenda has a very special place with all things LGBTQ and Rainbow Umbrella. When Brenda was really looking at becoming involved in the LGBTQIA 2S+ community here in Vermont and looking at, okay, I'm ready for that next part of my life. I'm really ready for Brenda to have a life. Brenda came to Rainbow Umbrella
That's right, we were all there.
and was involved in Rainbow Umbrella activities and was very much there when we were founding the LGBTQIA Alliance of Vermont and said, I'm looking for that next passion in my life. I would like to be one of the liaisons working on behalf of our communities. And from personal experience, the transformation from the first time Brenda walked into the State House to confront a legislator, and Brenda, just before she passed over, was the most phenomenal thing to watch. She was formidable, she was fierce, but she was compassionate. One of the things that the executive director of Emerge, and I'm going to mention them again in a minute, pointed out is that Brenda could walk into a room filled with people who didn't agree with her and could walk out with their feeling as though they just saw a different side of the issue. And some of the things that Brenda has been credited with, and it was during the first legislative session, was passage of the gender-neutral bathroom bill, being able to amend a Vermont birth certificate so that, your gender could be adequately identified on it. And also the provision on a Vermont driver's license where you can have a gender X marker, and within the first year that that option was available, over 400 people used it. But Brenda, wasn't just content with, what I know, what I can do. Brenda went to Emerge, which is specifically for women in politics. She was a participant, and then she was a mentor in the program. And she did so well that Brenda was the first transgender woman appointed to the Vermont Commission on Women. And her comment is, I may have been the first, but that's just opening the door for more to come afterwards. In her later years, Brenda had returned to New York to take care of her aging parents, but she could also indulge two of her greatest passions, which was that bright orange Jeep that we all know, and beer. What's your favorite beer? And it's where she met her, who would become her fiancée, Sarah Chapman, who was a bartender. So,
A perfect match.
thank you, Brenda,
We miss you, Brenda.
for having been here. And
Well, before we
But-
finish with Brenda, though, I think we have to give Keith credit that he often doesn't deserve because isn't recognized, because he was Brenda's mentor from the beginning. And she underwent a transformation that we all saw. And part of it was Emerge, and part of it, a big part of it, was Keith's mentorship. So,
Yeah.
you're a good friend.
Yes,
thank you.
and you took good care of her.
And I knew where the grab bar was in that Jeep.
Oh, I had such struggle with that Jeep.
I was going to say Christine Holquist, who was the first openly transgender candidate for governor, a major party candidate for governor, tells stories about Brenda's the one who persuaded her to run for governor, and also Brenda driving her everywhere in that Jeep regardless of weather. So, and whenever Brenda was around, a single text that said beer ? So it's,
Yeah.
and with that you have
It's now been a week since an ICE agent shot and killed 37-year-old Renee Good in Minneapolis, Minnesota, 3 times in the face and calling her a bitch. Communities around the nation are continuing to call for accountability in the wake of the shooting. Renee Good's extended family said on Monday it wanted justice and accountability for her death at the hands of an immigration and customs enforcement officer, but urged people stirred by the outrage of her shooting, the mother of 3, en route their conversations in humanity, empathy, and care for the families most affected. Renee Nicole Good wasn't following immigration and customs enforcement agents all day before she was killed. She had just dropped her son off at school in the morning when she randomly encountered them, her family maintains. Attorneys for Good's family assert that the 37-year-old poet and mother of 3 was just a legal observer. They said in a statement to USA Today that Good and her wife, Becca, came across the ICE operations on their way home and decided to stop, observe, with the intention of supporting and helping their neighbors. And we lost one of our own last year. Her name was Beverly Little Thunder. She was issued a death sentence, not by the government, by one of her own, who had sworn to kill the 55-year-old Lakota nurse for performing the sun dance, one of the most important and grueling ceremonies for Plains Indian tribes. Participants dance for 4 hours, 8 hours a day without food or water as a ritual of sacrifice, renewal, and strengthening. Elderly women pulled Little Thunder aside and suggested she create a ceremony for her own kind. saying if the Lakota people remembered their traditions, they'd be honored to have her dance. This kind of activism is typical of Little Thunder, who in 1933 helped coin the term Two-Spirit to signify queer Native Americans, and in 2001 became the first Native American to serve as Grand Marshal of a gay pride parade in Burlington, Vermont. She grew up straddling two worlds. Summers were spent with her grandmother at North Dakota's Standing Rock Reservation, while winters found her back in Los Angeles housing projects with her parents. Little Thunder later bounced from Indian boarding schools to juvie hall to 2 convents and an orphanage, and finally at 15 was married. She would eventually raise 5 children before coming out as a lesbian. In a Time of Truth and Reconciliation, One Bead at a Time is her memoir, and is a book that should be read if anybody wants to learn more about Beverly Little Thunder's life. Her story originates with her indigenous family roots of North Dakota and stories of her grandmother and great-grandmother, followed by her own mother. Between attempts to raise chickens, learning Lakota, and experiences of poverty, cherished memories connect the collection of these stories throughout. So please read it, and thank you.
The Sundance is an event that happens here in Vermont.
Yes.
So,
I'm going to talk about our dear friend who was part of Rainbow Umbrella, part of our women's discussion group, and a big part of our lives. She died gently and peacefully at home in April.
and her name is?
Marsha Johnson Bancroft.
Thank you.
Was truly remarkable and genuine spirit who touched the lives of everyone she met during her long and adventurous life, and she is deeply mourned by her family and friends. Marsha graduated with a BA in biology from Skidmore College in 1959. She became a lifelong member of PEO International, an organization that promoted educational opportunities for women. She was always interested in sports and became a champion athlete as an adult. She took up running in her 40s, joining the Amazing Feet Running Club and quickly progressing to competing in short races and marathons. She ran in the Boston Marathon, the New York Marathon, and a half-iron triathlon. She became a national triathlon champion in her age group at the U.S. Triathlon Olympic Distance Championship. She felt that living in Vermont, she considered an open and accepting place. She went on to start her third career at 62, where she graduated from Woodbury College in Montpelier with a degree in their paralegal program. After becoming a paralegal, Marsha worked for 19 years as an intake specialist at Disability Rights Vermont in Montpelier, where she was responsible for determining eligibility and providing legal assistance. She also ran a traumatic brain injury support group and did outreach work with women in prison. She was living at the time in Middlesex, Vermont. She was active in running clubs and competed in local races. Marsha was a passionate supporter of social justice and LGBTQ rights and was a member of Rainbow Umbrella of Central Vermont and the Women's Discussion Group. Marsha belonged to the Unitarian Church in Montpelier and retired from disability rights in Vermont at age 81. She saw the best in humankind and was ever the optimist with a huge heart, a forgiving spirit, and not 1 ounce of judgment in her bones, always humble about her accomplishments and abilities. She was an inspiration to everyone she met. And you have a story about Marsha, don't you, down at the Row Club?
Alpine Glow, which is a women's owned, locally owned spin cycle, exercise, And it's in the same building with Disability Rights Vermont. Marcia is a legend in there, and her photograph is still prominently displayed for inspiration for people who were maybe a quarter her age that she bested on those spin cycles.
Yes,
there-
and I think we can all say that we were proud to be in her chosen family.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a few national stories that I'm going to talk about, and one is about General Stanley McChrystal, who presided over historic farewell to 5 transgender troops forced into retirement. We've got to leverage every bit of talent that this nation has, the retired general told trans troops with more than 20 years of service forced out of the military by Trump administration. Retired Major General Tammy Smith, the Master of Ceremonies, stepped forward and formally called the room to order. Her opening words framed the moment not as routine, but as reckoning. This ceremony is unprecedented, not because your careers fell short in any way, but because you shine so brightly in a military that cast you aside is unworthy, Smith told the room. And here's a picture of the retirees. Let's see, I'm going to go to Attorney General Pam Bondi has directed the FBI to create a cash reward system for information leading to the arrest of leaders of so-called domestic terrorist organizations.
Didn't we report on this already?
Maybe we did. We did. So let's
Enough
see.
of that.
Enough of that, I know.
Can we split it if we put our own names in?
And then I'm just going to, Mark Rufio has been an outspoken for years, using his platform to challenge Trump-era politics.
I think it's Mark Ruffalo.
Ruffalo? Not Ruffalo.
Could be Ruffalo, but it's not Rufio.
Okay. And push back against authoritarian politics, showing up in speeches, rallies, and sustained advocacy to support. As an out lesbian and longtime advocate for LGBTQ plus causes, she has.
Who's Mark Ruffalo? How's Mark Ruffalo fitting in there? I can just add.
Oh, he and she were both wearing those buttons.
Be good.
Be good. And so this is Wanda Sykes.
Oh,
also.
I'm so glad you have that funny. I hope you have that funny anecdote.
No, I don't, but she brings, as an out lesbian and longtime advocate for LGBT causes, she has consistently spoken up for trans people from criticizing rhetoric she sees as damaging to trans community, urging support and protection for trans brothers and sisters in the broader fight for equality. She also helped raise awareness and support for organizations serving LGBTQ plus youth and communities, grounding her public influence in work that reaches beyond comedy clubs and award shows. And what was her?
She was giving the award for
Something.
stand-up performance, and she went after each and every nominee, and when they got to Ricky Gervais, she said, and he's going to thank God and the trans community for his award if he wins. And since he's not here, I'll get to say it for him. And guess what? He won, and she said it.
She accepted on behalf of the transgender community.
Absolutely.
What a lovely moment.
I know.
I missed the awards, but
I love her.
Yeah, I saw
is,
that commentary.
She is such a funny comedian and a great person. San Antonio will remove its iconic rainbow crosswalks by January 15th after being denied an exemption. A Texas city has become the latest city to be forced to remove its rainbow crosswalks in compliance with orders from Trump administration. San Antonio will replace its iconic Pride installment by January 15th after being denied an exemption from federal and state policies. City Councilor Shuk Kayur told local station that the city was unable to obtain a signed and sealed document by an engineer approving the design. So I guess anything else, Ian, I think can wait until next time.
Okay, well, let me begin on a note of outrage about what's going on in Gaza. Israel has recently required 7 aid organizations to suspend operations or withdraw from Gaza by refusing to renew their operating licenses under new registration rules. And these registration rules are so transparent. They require organizations to submit comprehensive details of their staff, funding, and operations, which many groups argue is arbitrary and puts local staff at risk. So 37 organizations have been forced to withdraw, Doctors Without Borders, and the situation in Gaza is terrible. I'd like to show you a picture now of a displaced Palestinian woman walking along the street while workers drain floodwaters as the region experiences cold winter conditions. And this is the Al-Wasi refugee camp on the southern Gaza Strip on December 29th. It's freezing there. People are starving. I heard on Democracy Now! Today an infant died yesterday.
I heard they're
forced to death.
refusing doctors Without Borders from.
Well, they're part of the 37 aid organizations that have been forced to withdraw. Since the current U.S.-brokered ceasefire in Gaza began on October 10, 2025, at least 442 Palestinians have been killed, 1,236 injured in continued Israeli attacks, according to figures from the Gaza Health Ministry and Government Media Office. The total number of Palestinians killed in Gaza since October 7th, 2023, which marked the Hamas attack, which we, of course, all recognize as deplorable. Since that day, 71,400 Gazans, as of January 11th, have been killed. And so, of course, the Hamas attack was awful, but genocide is not the response. And the one key point that I think I certainly feel like I have to think about is that this is U.S.-supported genocide. So, now I have a cheerful, we gotta have this, we have to have a cheerful story.
I have a cheerful.
When you started with I want to voice my outrage, I'm like, there's so much to choose from these days.
I know, and I think outrage will maybe stop my tears. So I wanted to count this as an international story, but really it's British. The first ever International Rebel Dykes Day is set to take place on the 29th of January and will honor the history of dikes and rebel dikes all over the world.
Yay.
And let's look at a picture now of the organizer. It's a retrospective term used to describe a raucous, unapologetic community of activist, sex-positive lesbians who lived in the very fringes of 1980s London, many of them squatting in areas such as Brixton and Peckham, and who ran riot throughout the decade in the city. The group's origins can be traced back, I don't know if you remember this, to the Greenham Common Women's Peace Camp of the early 80s, which itself was a liberating feminist space and a place to explore sapphic sexuality. The producer of the Rebel Dykes documentary, Shaban Fahy, says, "It's great that being a lesbian has become much more accepted, and the world is very different. But it seems to be always the version of, and it's the same with gay men as well, lesbians that straight people accept are the ones most socially acceptable, and the ones that look just like them. A lot of us just don't fit in. We don't fit into that queer stereotype," Fahy noted. "So I would call on women who feel like outsiders, and whatever way they want to be, to have this day." Fahy says that since her film about Rebel Dykes came out, things have really taken off. in terms of interest in this all too often forgotten period of queer British history, with countless groups and organizations reaching out for ways to commemorate the Rebel Dykes and Chain Reaction, and more about Chain Reaction. Alongside this, following the release of the documentary, several in-person exhibitions have taken place around the country using material from Rebel Dykes archive and response work by contemporary artists, including beds with notches carved in wood, leather jackets, diaries, and music made by women during the period. After the most recent exhibition at Homotopia in Liverpool, after that exhibition concluded, Fahey recalled, "We were all saying this needs to happen more. We need to celebrate the outsider lesbian art and culture a lot more. Enter International Rebel Dykes Day." I do think there's a gap for all queer women, all non-binary and trans bikers, punks, and musicians, actors, all of those who don't fit into the word lesbian, Fahey said of creating International Rebel Dykes Day. I think we need a day. The date of the International Rebel Dykes Day, the 29th of January, coincides with the anniversary of the opening of the legendary lesbian S&M club, Chain Reaction. Launched on the 29th of January in 1987, Chain Reaction was a fetish lesbian club night at a gay men's bar in Vauxhall, which took place every other Thursday. From erotic leather and strip performances to live sex shows, the club left a hedonistic and radical legacy on those that attend, with many lifelong relationships still intact and outrageous stories to boot. There was always, and I thought of Linda with this, there was always a sexy cabaret. There was a pool room next door with all the butches and femmes. And there was, I didn't think of Linda, I thought of her with the pool, but not of the rest of this context. There was sex in the toilets and drugs. I think we could still smoke in those days, so it was smoky as fuck. Fahey, who performed as a stripper on the opening night, recalled fondly. "We even brought a motorbike up one time, and some girl got fucked on the back of it. So yeah, this was a wild club, and we had that really changed things a lot. It gave us a gang, a place." Fahey went on to say of the legacy of Chain Reaction, "I always think that one of the most important things in queer culture is actual in real life spaces."
Is this London?
It's London, yeah, and elsewhere. But all sorts of spaces where we can make our art and be together and create community. Do you want to get involved in International Rebel Dykes Day? Well, there's no wrong way to do it, Fahey said, adding that there's already an active day, an archive day in London, a dyke club night in Dublin, and an exhibition in Edinburgh. But no celebration of this history is too small.
So much for the stereotype of a lesbian as being a librarian with sensible shoes.
You know,
And big glasses.
I know.
Yeah.
we don't know
I'm
that,
getting my leather coat out of the back of the closet, Ann. I'll meet you on the corner.
Me too.
we don't know if it'll work, but dyke culture has always been built that way. This is an opportunity for a DIY dyke community to come together to
Good.
create. Now, should I do my headlines?
Should we
before
fly to London for this?
We could go to London. Sure, we've been to Vauxhall. We went to that
Yeah.
gay theater there.
Yep.
All right, terrible news now from Azerbaijan. Police have detained 106 people in Baku in a Baku raid targeting the LGBTQ plus community. According to witnesses, police used force, subjected them to degrading treatment, and issued threats. They said that there was drug use, but no narcotics were found. It began at 1 a.m. Cops entered the club and forcibly escorted those inside into the street, made them stand for 2 hours. It was just really pure harassment. At the station, they were kept outdoors for 2 hours in cold conditions, wearing light clothing, and not allowed to sit down. A detainee said police lined everyone up and ordered them to stand without bending their knees, threatening sexual violence against anyone who moved. Detainees said they were constantly insulted, sworn at, and subjected to psychological pressure at the police station. According to detainees, they were told that they would not be released until these fines were paid. After several hours, they said the 8 detainees had been held on suspicion of drug use. But since there were no drugs, all 106 people were fined under administrative offense for smoking in an enclosed public space. This is just pure harassment. The fines amounted to about $18, and in some cases about $30. So they were released, and Azerbaijan, according to studies, is the worst place in the world to be LGBTQ.
Really?
At least,
Worse than Russia?
all right, yeah, in Europe. Yeah. This is reflected in ILGA Europe's annual Rainbow Index. Azerbaijan ranks last among 49 European countries and has held the worst performing position for 9 consecutive years.
Wow.
So,
And they're working hard to maintain it.
and they have no connection whatsoever with the European Union. They aren't members, they don't want to be members. And, you know, the article kept saying, well, they have to have an anti-LGBT discrimination law. I mean, what are the chances?
All right, we're going to have to move along soon, Ann, so.
Okay, let me show you a picture of pioneering gay rights director Rosa von Prunheim, who died at 83. And I wanted to show a clip of his films, but they're all in German. So he directed more than 150 short and feature films, including that influenced the LGBTQ movement. His 71 film, It Is Not the Homosexual Who Is Perverse, but the Society in Which He Lives, is widely credited with starting the gay rights movement in Germany.
Actually, we have a little more time, so.
Okay, well, let's go to Poland, which has
It's been a while since you've been in Poland.
I know, and I have all these highlights from it. It has acted to improve the status of same-sex couples with the cohabitation bill. The bill will allow 2 people, regardless of gender, to sign a cohabitation contract at a notary's office. It covers housing rights, alimony, access to health information and health insurance, care leave, joint tax returns, and tax exemptions. The measure stops short of legalizing same-sex marriage, which remains banned. So we know there's been an argument between the conservative nationalist president, Karol Nawrocki, who is pretty anti-gay. This is not a moment of triumph. After 2 years of Donald Tusk's government, the ruling coalition has finally developed a joint proposal. The Campaign Against Homophobia said in a statement after the initial publication of the bill. This is not the bill we've been fighting for over the years. It's a meager response to great expectations, and the only one that, in the current situation, can offer any sense of security. Mostly Catholic Poland remains among the most restrictive EU states on LGBTQ rights, despite growing public support for legal recognition of same-sex couples. So, I have a couple of pleasant pieces from South America. Let's take a look at Brazilian tennis player João Lucas Reis da Silva, who's set to make history again, this time in the Australian Open. He arrived in Melbourne this week, made history in late 2024 when he came out as gay by sharing a sweet snap of his partner, Gui Sampaio Ricardo, to celebrate his birthday. The 25-year-old then became the first out gay tennis pro to compete in a Grand Slam event. He's now set to continue making history by competing in the qualifying rounds of this year's Australian Open as the first gay man to do so. At the time of his coming out, Silva was ranked outside the top 400 in the world. Since then, he's climbed more than 200 spots to a career high, ranking number 187 in the world, and in June last year, he won his first challenger title in Santa Fe. His impact is undeniable, with Tony Hagan of the gay tennis broadcasting podcast telling Q News in August that year it marks a significant step toward greater LGBTQI representation and acceptance. And in men's tennis, Openly gay athletes have been extremely rare. His participation helps break down stigma and pushes the sport toward greater inclusivity and diversity. His openness has helped to pave the way for other players to come out. In December last year, Switzerland Mika Bruno came out as gay in a heartwarming message posted to Instagram. He shared that he decided to share his statement with the world to take a step for myself, but also because I think it's not talked about enough in sports. Bruno added that in the ideal world, no one would need to come out at all. My last story involves trans model Bernardo Rebella. Let's look at a picture of him, please. He is Mr. Brazil's top 10. He's won Mr. Trans Brazil and being a top 10 finalist on Mr. Brazil. He tells Out magazine that he's determined to conquer new spaces for trans male representation. So,
Is that it?
I have more. I could talk about Mr. Robello. He certainly didn't expect to land in the top 10 of the competition as a first-time contender. As a 30-year-old personal trainer, influencer, and model from Resende, Rio de Janeiro, Robello worked really hard for many years to become so-called overnight success in the male pageant world and garner thousands of followers on social media. So good for him.
And you have one thing you would
I
like to
have
share before
one thing
we...
before we leave, and this is like, I took this for you primarily, but for everybody, because we all love Tales of the City, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, author Armistead
Mopin.
Mona of the Manor.
has opened about his sexuality since the 1970s. And over the weekend, he shared more details about his relationship with Rock Hudson, who died from complications from AIDS in 1985. In his new video, The Tales of the City, author complimented the late iconic Golden Age actor on his legendary large penis.
Isn't that informative?
Alrighty.
Thank you for sharing, Linda.
Oh, I thought, it's a little different than what
I
we're
don't know, I
reporting.
think it goes right well with the dikes and the,
Yeah, really. Okay.
So
All right.
Anne,
We're going to close the show in a different way today. Usually we ask you to resist, and of course that's implied in every show. But you may recall that one positive thing happened January 1st. Zoran Mandami was sworn in as mayor of New York, and the ceremony was very moving. And what was particularly striking that we'd like to share with you tonight is a rendition of the song Bread and Roses by Lucy Dacus, who is a queer singer-songwriter. And the thing
And a
about
beautiful voice.
well, you'll hear it soon. But what's significant about the song is that it's really resonant with suffragists and labor leaders. We may recall, historians may recall, the horrible tragedy of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory in 1911, where 146 young women, mostly immigrants, were killed. That occurred in 1911, as I said. Then in 1912, there was a 3-month textile strike in Lawrence, Massachusetts, that became associated with this
They have
song.
beautiful pictures of that strike, too.
So it was, in 1912, it was first mentioned by a woman in the context of women's suffrage. So this song has a rich history of resistance and struggle. And we would like to end the show with Lucy Dacus singing it, and we'd like to present it as a tribute to our fallen comrade, Renee Good.
As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mil off life's gray are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, we battle too for men, for they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead go crying through our singing their ancient call for bread. Small art and love and beauty, their drudging spirits new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we go marching, marching, we bring the greater days. The rising of the women means the rising of the race. No more the drudge and idler tend that toil where one reposes, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well